They told me I wasn't welcome at Grandpa's will reading because blood relatives only. But what they discovered in that mahogany-paneled law office was just the beginning of a story that would teach them the difference between family and genetics. While they fought over his visible assets, I was already the guardian of treasures they never knew existed. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Elena Martinez, and I'm about to share how being excluded from one room led me to inherit something far more valuable than money, and how my grandfather's final lesson proved that the greatest treasures are always hidden from those who seek only the obvious. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered with the clinical efficiency that accompanies life-changing moments. Helena Rodriguez, attorney for the estate of Theodore Castellano, requested the presence of immediate family members for the reading of his last will and testament. The elegant letterhead bore an address in downtown Phoenix, Arizona, and a date that would forever divide my life into before and after. What struck me most was not what the letter contained, but what it deliberately omitted. No mention of my name. No acknowledgement of the 23 years I had spent as Theodore's granddaughter. No recognition of the bond that had shaped both our lives since the day he took custody of an 8-year-old girl whose parents had died in a construction accident. I placed the letter on my kitchen counter next to the architectural blueprints I had been reviewing for my sustainable housing development project in Tempe. The contrast was stark. One document representing exclusion from a family I had served faithfully, the other representing the future I was building through skills Theodore had taught me during countless evenings in his workshop. My phone buzzed with a text message from my cousin Marcus, Theodore's biological grandson. Hope you understand why you can't be at the reading tomorrow. Family business, you know? The casual cruelty of his words reflected the sentiment that had poisoned family gatherings for years. Despite Theodore's consistent inclusion of me in every holiday, birthday, and milestone celebration, his biological relatives had never accepted that adoption created genuine family bonds. The irony was profound. While Marcus and his sister Carmen had spent the past decade treating Theodore as their personal bank account, requesting loans for failed business ventures and expensive vacations, I had built a relationship based on mutual respect, shared interests, and genuine affection. Our connection had evolved far beyond the legal documents that made me his granddaughter. Theodore Castellano had been a master craftsman, a man whose weathered hands could transform raw wood into furniture pieces that lasted generations. His workshop behind the house in Scottsdale had been my sanctuary throughout adolescence, a place where he taught me that precision, patience, and integrity were the foundations of any lasting creation. These lessons had shaped my approach to architecture, my philosophy of sustainable construction, and my understanding that true value emerged from careful planning rather than quick profit. The workshop conversations had covered everything from advanced joinery techniques to the economic principles that governed successful construction businesses. Theodore had built a modest empire through careful planning and ethical practices, starting with a single handcrafted dining table and expanding into custom furniture designed for exclusive clientele throughout the Southwest. His reputation for quality and reliability had sustained him through economic downturns and market changes that destroyed competitors focused solely on profit margins. During my college years at Arizona State University, where I studied sustainable architecture, Theodore had become my most valuable advisor. While other students struggled to understand the practical applications of theoretical concepts, I could discuss load-bearing calculations and material stress factors with someone who had spent 50 years transforming architectural plans into physical structures. Those evening conversations had revealed Theodore's understanding of business principles that extended far beyond furniture crafting. He spoke knowledgeably about real estate markets, construction regulations, environmental impact assessments, and the economic forces that shaped urban development. His insights had proven invaluable as I developed my thesis on affordable, sustainable housing for desert climates. The personal bond we shared had deepened through shared challenges and celebrations. When my first major construction project faced regulatory obstacles, Theodore had introduced me to city council members who respected his reputation for ethical business practices. When I received recognition for innovative green building techniques, he had been the first person I called to share the achievement. This relationship had not gone unnoticed by Marcus and Carmen, who viewed my close connection with Theodore as a threat to their inheritance expectations. Their resentment had intensified, as Theodore increasingly sought my advice on business decisions while expressing frustration with their constant financial requests and lack of interest in his work or well-being. Family gatherings had become exercises in barely concealed hostility. Marcus and Carmen would arrive with new requests for money, while treating me with cold formality that made clear they considered me an interloper, despite Theodore's obvious affection and respect for my achievements. They had convinced themselves that my adoption was somehow less legitimate than their genetic connection, a belief that colored every interaction. The exclusion from the will reading represented the culmination of years of subtle and not-so-subtle messages that I remained outside the true family circle. Helena Rodriguez had clearly received instructions that reflected Marcus and Carmen's interpretation of family legitimacy rather than Theodore's actual relationships and preferences. As I reviewed the certified letter once more, I found myself thinking about the conversation I had shared with Theodore just 3 weeks before his sudden heart attack. We had been in his workshop, where he was applying the final finish to a custom cabinet commissioned for a Phoenix art gallery. His movements had been slower than usual, betraying the fatigue he had tried to hide from family members who only contacted him when they needed money. "Elena?" he had said, pausing in his work to study me with the intensity he reserved for examining wood grain patterns. "There are things about family that blood relatives don't always understand. Sometimes the people who choose to love you prove more faithful than those who assume they deserve your love simply because of genetics." The comment had struck me as unusually philosophical for a man who typically expressed wisdom through practical demonstrations rather than abstract statements. I had interpreted it as reflection on the disappointment he felt regarding Marcus and Carmen's transactional approach to family relationships. Now, holding the exclusion letter, I realized that Theodore's comment had been more specific than I had understood at the time. He had been preparing me for exactly this moment, when genetic claims would be used to invalidate the relationship we had built through mutual respect and genuine care. The workshop behind his house had been locked since the funeral, its contents presumably awaiting distribution according to the will that I would not be permitted to hear. The thought of Theodore's tools and projects being dispersed by people who had never understood their significance filled me with profound sadness. Yet there was something else, a nagging sense that I was missing an important element of the situation. Theodore had been too methodical, too careful a planner to leave our relationship vulnerable to the whims of relatives who had never appreciated either of us. The man who had taught me that the most important structural elements were often invisible to casual observation would not have overlooked the need to protect what mattered most to him. As the Phoenix sunset painted my apartment walls in shades of amber and gold, I found myself remembering another workshop conversation from several months earlier. Theodore had been explaining the difference between obvious craftsmanship and hidden structural integrity, using an antique cabinet as his example. "People notice the decorative elements," he had said, running his fingers along the carved facade. "But the real engineering is in the joints you can't see, the bracing that provides stability, the foundation work that ensures everything else remains solid over time. The most important elements of good construction are always hidden from casual observers." At the time, I had assumed he was discussing furniture construction techniques. Now I wondered whether Theodore had been sharing wisdom that extended far beyond woodworking principles. Perhaps the exclusion from tomorrow's will reading was not the devastating rejection it appeared to be, but rather the first step in discovering the hidden structural elements of his final plans. The possibility filled me with cautious hope as I prepared for whatever revelations tomorrow might bring. While Marcus and Carmen focused on the obvious inheritance they expected to claim, I began to suspect that Theodore's most important legacy might be hidden in places they would never think to look. The workshop key had been in my possession for 3 years, a symbol of trust that Theodore had never extended to his biological grandchildren, despite their repeated requests for access to his tools and equipment. Tomorrow, while they attended the formal will reading, I would return to the place where Theodore had taught me the most important lesson of all, that true treasure is always hidden from those who seek only surface value. The realization brought me peace for the first time since receiving the exclusion letter. Theodore had spent 50 years mastering the art of creating lasting value through careful planning and hidden structural elements. If his final plans followed the same principles that had guided his craftsmanship, then the will reading tomorrow would reveal only the decorative facade of his true intentions. As night settled over the desert landscape, I began to understand that being excluded from that mahogany-paneled law office might be the greatest gift Theodore could have given me. While others fought over the obvious inheritance, I would be free to discover the treasures he had hidden for someone who truly understood the difference between surface appearance and structural integrity. The next morning would bring revelations that would validate everything Theodore had taught me about patience, preparation, and the wisdom of looking beyond obvious appearances. But tonight, I simply felt grateful for the bond we had shared and confident that a master craftsman's final project would prove as carefully constructed as everything else he had created throughout his remarkable life. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Marcus and Carmen had assumed that genetic connection guaranteed inheritance rights, but Theodore had spent 23 years teaching me that the most valuable legacies are earned through respect, understanding, and genuine care rather than biological accident. Tomorrow would begin the process of discovering exactly how thoroughly he had hidden his most precious treasures from those who valued only obvious wealth. The certified letter had been intended to exclude me from Theodore's final legacy, but instead it had provided the first clue in a treasure hunt designed by a master craftsman who understood that the most important gifts are always concealed from unworthy recipients. While they argued over visible assets, I would be searching for the hidden structural elements that revealed Theodore's true intentions for the granddaughter, who had earned his respect through years of genuine relationship rather than genetic entitlement. The morning of the will reading arrived with the harsh clarity that only Arizona sunlight can provide. While Marcus and Carmen prepared for what they assumed would be their financial vindication, I found myself drawn to memories that revealed the true foundation of my relationship with Theodore Castellano. The journey that led to this moment had begun 15 years earlier, when I was a confused teenager struggling to understand my place within a family that seemed determined to remind me of my outsider status. Theodore had recognized this struggle during one of our first meaningful conversations, which occurred not in his workshop but in the emergency room at Scottsdale Memorial Hospital. I had been 16 years old, rushing to complete a high school project on sustainable building materials, when I slipped from a ladder while attempting to photograph solar panel installations on Theodore's roof. The fall had resulted in a sprained ankle and wounded pride, but Theodore's response had revealed the depth of his character and his unique approach to teaching life lessons. Rather than expressing anger about my reckless behavior or concern about potential liability issues, Theodore had used the hospital waiting period to engage me in a detailed discussion about construction safety protocols and the importance of proper planning before executing any project. His calm, methodical approach to what could have been a crisis demonstrated the same principles that guided his craftsmanship: careful assessment, systematic problem-solving, and learning from every experience. During that conversation, Theodore had shared stories about his own early mistakes in construction work, emphasizing how each error had contributed to his eventual mastery of the craft. He spoke about the difference between reckless risk-taking and calculated challenges that promoted growth and learning. This distinction would become a cornerstone of my personal and professional development philosophy. The hospital incident had also revealed Theodore's understanding of family dynamics that extended far beyond simple genetics. When Marcus and Carmen arrived to check on the situation, their primary concerns focused on potential insurance claims and family liability, rather than my physical well-being or emotional state. Their questions centered on whether Theodore might face legal consequences, rather than expressing genuine care about my recovery. Theodore had observed this interaction with the same careful attention he applied to examining wood grain patterns, and I sensed his disappointment in their self-centered response to a family crisis. He had not criticized them directly, but his subsequent actions made clear that he recognized the difference between relatives who viewed family as a source of potential problems and those who understood it as a source of mutual support and care. The weeks following the accident had marked a turning point in our relationship. Theodore began inviting me to spend time in his workshop not just as a casual observer, but as an active participant in projects that required increasing levels of skill and responsibility. These sessions became intensive education in both technical craftsmanship and life philosophy, as Theodore used woodworking principles to illustrate broader concepts about integrity, patience, and the importance of building lasting value. The workshop itself reflected Theodore's approach to life and work. Every tool had its designated place, maintained in perfect condition, and organized according to function and frequency of use. The workbenches showed evidence of decades of careful use, their surfaces worn smooth by countless projects, but maintained with the same attention to detail that characterized his finished pieces. Theodore's teaching methodology emphasized understanding principles rather than memorizing procedures. He would present me with a woodworking challenge, provide access to necessary tools and materials, then guide me through the problem-solving process rather than simply demonstrating the correct technique. This approach required me to think critically about each step, understand the reasoning behind specific choices, and develop confidence in my ability to adapt general principles to unique situations. The lessons extended far beyond woodworking techniques. When I struggled with a complex joinery project, Theodore used the experience to discuss the importance of patience and precision in any endeavor that aimed for lasting quality. When I became frustrated with a finishing process that required multiple applications over several days, he explained how worthwhile achievements often demanded sustained effort rather than immediate gratification. These workshop conversations gradually revealed Theodore's extensive knowledge of business principles that had enabled his transition from individual craftsman to successful entrepreneur. He shared insights about customer relationship management, quality control standards, pricing strategies that reflected true value rather than market competition, and the importance of building a reputation based on consistent excellence rather than promotional marketing. The business wisdom proved invaluable during my college years, as I applied Theodore's principles to academic projects that required both technical competence and strategic thinking. While other students focused primarily on design innovation or theoretical concepts, I learned to consider practical implementation, cost management, regulatory compliance, and long-term sustainability factors that determined whether architectural ideas could become successful real-world projects. Theodore's influence extended beyond professional development to shape my understanding of ethical responsibility and community service. His furniture business included a practice of donating time and materials to community organizations that served low-income families, elderly residents, and disabled individuals who needed custom solutions for accessibility challenges. These projects often required creative problem-solving and careful resource management, as budgets were typically minimal and timeline pressures significant. Participating in these community service projects taught me that expertise carried responsibility for contributing to broader social welfare, rather than simply generating personal profit. Theodore demonstrated how skilled professionals could use their capabilities to address community needs while maintaining business sustainability and personal fulfillment. The contrast between Theodore's approach to community engagement and his biological grandchildren's attitudes toward social responsibility became increasingly apparent during family gatherings. While Marcus and Carmen focused conversation on their personal achievements and financial goals, Theodore would share updates about community projects and express pride in contributions that created lasting benefits for others rather than immediate returns for himself. This difference in values had created growing tension within family relationships, as Marcus and Carmen interpreted Theodore's community focus as evidence that his business priorities were misguided or that his resources were being wasted on undeserving recipients. Their criticism of his charitable activities revealed their fundamental misunderstanding of the principles that had guided his success and sustained his satisfaction throughout decades of professional achievement. The educational foundation Theodore provided had proven essential when I encountered challenges during my early career as a sustainable architecture professional. The construction industry presented numerous obstacles for young professionals, particularly women attempting to establish credibility in male-dominated environments where expertise was often questioned based on appearance or assumptions about technical competence. Theodore's lessons about patience, persistence, and strategic relationship building enabled me to navigate these challenges while maintaining focus on long-term objectives rather than reacting to immediate frustrations. His emphasis on demonstrating value through consistent performance rather than aggressive self-promotion helped me establish professional relationships based on mutual respect and proven capability. The technical skills developed in Theodore's workshop provided practical advantages that distinguished my architectural practice from competitors who possessed theoretical knowledge but lacked hands-on construction experience. My understanding of material properties, construction techniques, and structural engineering principles enabled me to design buildings that could be constructed efficiently while meeting both aesthetic and functional requirements. This combination of theoretical education and practical experience had attracted attention from clients who valued innovative design approaches supported by realistic implementation strategies. My portfolio included projects that achieved ambitious sustainability goals while remaining within budget constraints and regulatory requirements, a balance that many architectural firms struggled to maintain. The success of my professional practice had vindicated Theodore's teaching methods and reinforced my appreciation for the education he had provided through workshop sessions that initially appeared to be simple hobby activities. His investment in my development had created capabilities that extended far beyond woodworking skills to encompass problem-solving approaches, quality standards, and ethical frameworks that guided every aspect of my professional and personal decision-making. The relationship we had built through shared work and mutual respect represented a model of family connection that transcended genetic relationships to embrace chosen bonds based on compatibility, shared values, and genuine care for each other's welfare and development. This understanding had sustained me through periods when Marcus and Carmen's hostility made family gatherings uncomfortable, and their constant financial requests created awkward dynamics. Theodore had never explicitly criticized his biological grandchildren, but his actions made clear that he recognized the difference between relationships built on mutual benefit and those based on one-sided extraction. His decision to provide me with workshop access, business mentorship, and emotional support reflected his appreciation for genuine family connections rather than obligations imposed by genetic accident. The workshop key in my possession represented more than simple access to tools and equipment. It symbolized Theodore's trust in my judgment, his confidence in my respect for his property and legacy, and his belief that I understood the principles that had guided his craftsmanship and business success. This trust had been earned through years of demonstrating responsibility, expressing genuine interest in his work and wisdom, and providing support during periods when his health and energy were declining. As I prepared to use that key for what might be the final time, I reflected on the profound gift Theodore had given me through his patient teaching and generous sharing of knowledge, experience, and wisdom. The inheritance dispute that would unfold in the coming days would reveal whether genetic relationships or earned connections would determine the distribution of his material legacy, but the educational foundation he had provided would remain mine regardless of legal outcomes. The morning light streaming through my apartment windows illuminated the architectural drawings spread across my desk, projects that incorporated techniques and principles learned during countless evening sessions in Theodore's workshop. These drawings represented the continuation of his legacy through my professional work, regardless of whatever material assets might be distributed according to his formal will. The true measure of Theodore's impact on my life could not be quantified through financial inheritance or material possessions, but rather through the capabilities he had developed, the values he had instilled, and the confidence he had created through years of patient mentorship and genuine family connection. This foundation would sustain me through whatever challenges lay ahead, including the inheritance dispute that threatened to divide our family along genetic lines rather than bonds of mutual respect and care. The morning of the will reading unfolded with the precision that characterized Theodore's approach to every significant undertaking. While I prepared for my own investigation of his workshop, Marcus and Carmen were undoubtedly rehearsing their expectations for claiming the bulk of his estate. The central challenge that would define our family's future was beginning to crystallize, though none of us yet understood its full dimensions. The formal reading was scheduled for 10 o'clock at the downtown Phoenix offices of Rodriguez, Mitchell & Associates, a prestigious firm that specialized in estate planning for affluent clients throughout the Southwest. Helena Rodriguez had established her practice on a foundation of discretion, thoroughness, and absolute adherence to client instructions, regardless of how unusual or controversial those instructions might appear to beneficiaries. Theodore had selected Rodriguez specifically because her reputation included successful management of complex estate situations involving blended families, adoptions, and inheritance disputes that required careful legal navigation. Her client roster included successful entrepreneurs, real estate developers, and business owners who understood that effective estate planning required more than simple asset distribution according to conventional family expectations. The challenge that awaited our family extended far beyond the typical inheritance dispute between competing relatives. Theodore had spent the final years of his life constructing a comprehensive plan that would test each family member's character, reveal their true priorities, and ultimately reward those who had demonstrated genuine understanding of his values and principles. The complexity of this challenge reflected Theodore's recognition that simple genetic relationships had failed to produce the family bonds he had hoped would characterize his legacy. His biological grandchildren had consistently treated him as a financial resource rather than a beloved relative deserving respect and genuine care. Their interactions focused on extracting immediate benefits rather than building lasting relationships based on mutual affection and shared interests. The documentation that would emerge from the formal will reading represented only the surface layer of Theodore's comprehensive estate planning strategy. The visible assets that Marcus and Carmen expected to inherit included his Scottsdale residence, the workshop and its contents, his collection of vintage woodworking tools, and the investment portfolio that had sustained him through retirement. These assets totaled approximately $2 million, a substantial inheritance that would significantly impact any recipient's financial circumstances. However, Theodore's true estate planning genius lay in structures that would not be revealed through the formal will reading. His understanding of legal frameworks, business organization principles, and asset protection strategies had enabled him to create inheritance mechanisms that operated independently of traditional probate procedures, while remaining completely compliant with applicable regulations. The challenge facing our family members would test not only their legal understanding, but their fundamental approach to relationships, work, and responsibility. Theodore had designed his estate plan to reward sustained commitment, genuine care, and demonstrated understanding of the principles that had guided his personal and professional success. Those who had viewed him primarily as a source of financial benefit would discover that their expectations bore no relationship to his actual intentions. My exclusion from the formal will reading represented a deliberate element of Theodore's comprehensive plan, rather than simply the result of Marcus and Carmen's genetic prejudice. Theodore had anticipated their attempt to marginalize my participation in inheritance proceedings, and he had structured his estate plan to function effectively regardless of their efforts to exclude me from family decision-making processes. The workshop key in my possession represented access to information and resources that extended far beyond the tools and equipment visible to casual observers. Theodore had spent years preparing materials, documents, and instructions that would guide me through the discovery process he had designed to reveal his true intentions for family asset distribution and legacy preservation. The challenge identification process began as I drove toward Theodore's Scottsdale residence while Marcus and Carmen attended the formal will reading downtown. The contrast between their focus on immediate asset acquisition and my commitment to understanding Theodore's comprehensive intentions reflected the fundamental difference in our approaches to family relationships and inherited responsibility. Theodore's house stood on a 2-acre property that he had purchased 30 years earlier, when Scottsdale's development patterns still allowed for substantial residential lots with space for workshops, gardens, and the kind of privacy that supported serious craftsmanship activities. The property represented his vision of sustainable living that balanced professional workspace requirements with personal sanctuary needs. The residence itself reflected Theodore's architectural preferences and construction expertise. He had designed and built the house according to desert climate principles that maximized energy efficiency, while creating comfortable interior environments throughout Arizona's extreme seasonal temperature variations. Every element of the construction demonstrated his attention to detail and commitment to quality that would provide decades of reliable service. The workshop occupied a separate building behind the main residence, connected by covered walkways that provided weather protection while maintaining functional separation between living and working spaces. This facility represented the culmination of Theodore's professional evolution, from individual craftsman to master teacher, who understood that knowledge transfer required appropriate physical infrastructure, as well as personal commitment. Entering the workshop after Theodore's death created an emotional experience that combined grief for his loss with anticipation for the discoveries that awaited my investigation. The familiar sense of wood, finishing materials, and machine oil triggered memories of countless evening sessions when Theodore had shared both technical knowledge and life wisdom through patient demonstration and careful explanation. The workshop organization reflected Theodore's systematic approach to every aspect of his craft. Tools were arranged according to function, frequency of use, and logical workflow patterns that enabled efficient project completion while maintaining safety standards. Reference materials, project plans, and business records occupied designated storage areas that protected important documents while ensuring accessibility when information was needed. However, the workshop contained elements that had not been visible during my previous visits, or perhaps I had not possessed sufficient understanding to recognize their significance. Storage areas that I had assumed contained only materials and supplies revealed carefully organized collections of documents, photographs, and correspondence that chronicled Theodore's business development, community involvement, and family relationships over several decades. The discovery of these materials indicated that Theodore had maintained comprehensive records of his interactions with family members, business associates, and community organizations. The documentation included not only financial records and legal agreements but detailed observations about character, reliability, and commitment levels demonstrated by various individuals throughout extended relationships. These records revealed Theodore's understanding that effective inheritance planning required thorough assessment of potential beneficiaries, capabilities, values, and likelihood of using inherited resources responsibly. His documentation process had enabled him to make inheritance decisions based on demonstrated behavior patterns rather than assumptions about genetic relationships or expressed intentions. The challenge facing our family involved much more than simple asset distribution according to conventional inheritance expectations. Theodore had created a comprehensive evaluation system that would test each family member's understanding of his values, their commitment to continuing his legacy, and their capacity for managing inherited responsibilities effectively. The materials I discovered in the workshop indicated that Theodore had spent years developing criteria for inheritance decisions that extended far beyond financial considerations, to encompass character assessment, skills evaluation, and commitment to community service principles that had guided his personal and professional development. Marcus and Carmen would discover that their genetic relationship provided no automatic claim to Theodore's estate, while their demonstrated behavior patterns had actually disqualified them from receiving significant inheritance benefits. Their focus on immediate financial extraction rather than relationship building had been thoroughly documented and would influence Theodore's final asset distribution decisions. The challenge that awaited my investigation involved deciphering Theodore's comprehensive plan for revealing his true estate structure, while protecting his legacy from individuals who lacked the character and commitment necessary to manage inherited resources appropriately. The complexity of this challenge required understanding legal frameworks, business organization principles, and ethical considerations that reflected Theodore's sophisticated approach to legacy preservation. The workshop investigation revealed that Theodore had anticipated every aspect of the family dynamic that would emerge following his death. He had prepared responses to Marcus and Carmen's expected attempts to claim primary inheritance rights based on genetic relationships, while marginalizing my participation in family asset distribution decisions. The documents and materials I discovered indicated that Theodore's estate plan included provisions for testing each family member's understanding of his values, their commitment to continuing his community service activities, and their capacity for managing business operations according to ethical principles that had characterized his professional success. The challenge identification process revealed that Theodore had created inheritance mechanisms that would reward sustained commitment and demonstrated understanding while protecting his assets from individuals whose behavior patterns indicated they would dissipate inherited resources through careless spending or inappropriate business decisions. The complexity of Theodore's estate planning strategy reflected his recognition that simple asset transfer procedures were insufficient for preserving the values and principles that had guided his remarkable achievements in business, community service, and family relationships. His comprehensive plan required beneficiaries to demonstrate genuine understanding of his legacy rather than simply claiming inheritance rights based on genetic connections or expressed expectations. As I continued investigating the workshop materials, the full scope of Theodore's challenge began to emerge. He had created a systematic process for evaluating family members' character, capabilities, and commitment levels, while providing opportunities for those who demonstrated appropriate understanding to access resources and responsibilities that would enable them to continue his legacy effectively. The challenge facing our family would test not only individual characters, but the fundamental assumptions about inheritance rights that had guided Marcus and Carmen's expectations for decades. Theodore's estate plan would reward those who had earned his respect through genuine relationship building, while protecting his assets from relatives who viewed family connections as sources of unearned benefits, rather than foundations for mutual support and shared responsibility. The formal will reading concluded at precisely 11:30 that morning, approximately 90 minutes after Marcus and Carmen had arrived at the downtown Phoenix offices, with expectations that would prove fundamentally misguided. While I continued my systematic investigation of Theodore's workshop materials, they experienced the first wave of confusion and resistance that would characterize their response to his carefully constructed estate plan. Helena Rodriguez had conducted the reading with the professional precision that distinguished her practice, presenting Theodore's formal will according to established legal protocols while maintaining strict adherence to his specific instructions regarding information disclosure. The document she read aloud contained provisions that challenged every assumption Marcus and Carmen had maintained about their inheritance expectations and family status within Theodore's estate planning priorities. The formal will established a foundation that distributed Theodore's visible assets according to a framework that acknowledged biological relationships, while incorporating conditions that reflected his understanding of demonstrated character and sustained commitment. Marcus received ownership of the Scottsdale residence along with responsibility for maintaining the property according to specific standards that preserved its architectural integrity and environmental sustainability features. Carmen inherited Theodore's investment portfolio, which included stock holdings, municipal bonds, and real estate investment trust positions that had provided his retirement income throughout the previous decade. However, her inheritance included fiduciary responsibilities that required quarterly reporting to designated oversight authorities and adherence to investment strategies that maintained portfolio stability rather than pursuing aggressive growth approaches that might jeopardize capital preservation. The workshop and its contents presented the first significant deviation from conventional inheritance expectations. Rather than distributing these assets to his biological grandchildren, Theodore's will designated them as community resources that would support educational programs for young people interested in traditional craftsmanship and sustainable construction techniques. Marcus and Carmen would serve as trustees responsible for program administration, but they could not claim personal ownership of tools, equipment, or workshop facilities. Most shocking to Marcus and Carmen was the will's treatment of my status within the family structure. Despite their efforts to exclude me from inheritance proceedings based on genetic arguments, Theodore's formal will explicitly recognized me as his granddaughter with equal standing to biological relatives. The document included specific language affirming that adoption had created genuine family bonds that deserved recognition and protection through appropriate legal frameworks. However, the formal will's provisions for my inheritance differed significantly from the assets distributed to Marcus and Carmen. Instead of receiving specific material possessions or financial instruments, I inherited what Theodore described as educational resources and developmental opportunities that reflect demonstrated commitment to continuing the principles and practices that have guided my personal and professional achievement. The vague language surrounding my inheritance had confused Helena Rodriguez during her initial review of Theodore's estate planning documents. She had requested clarification regarding the specific assets or financial provisions that would constitute educational resources and developmental opportunities, but Theodore had insisted that the language remain unchanged while providing supplementary materials that would clarify his intentions after the formal reading concluded. Marcus and Carmen's initial reaction to the will reading reflected their fundamental misunderstanding of Theodore's character and their assumption that genetic relationships automatically entitled them to preferential inheritance treatment. They had expected to receive the bulk of his estate through simple asset transfer procedures that required minimal ongoing responsibility or demonstrated competence in managing inherited resources. The conditions attached to their inheritance created immediate resistance because they implied ongoing oversight and accountability requirements that conflicted with their expectations of receiving unconditional access to Theodore's accumulated wealth. Marcus expressed particular frustration with the property maintenance standards that would govern his ownership of the Scottsdale residence, viewing these requirements as unnecessary restrictions on his property rights. Carmen's reaction to the investment portfolio inheritance focused on the fiduciary responsibilities and reporting requirements that would limit her discretion in managing the inherited assets. She had anticipated receiving immediate access to liquid funds that could support lifestyle improvements and discretionary spending, rather than structured investment management responsibilities that required financial expertise and regulatory compliance. Both biological grandchildren expressed skepticism about the community workshop program and their designated roles as trustees responsible for educational initiative administration. They questioned Theodore's decision to convert valuable workshop assets into community resources rather than distributing them as personal property that could generate immediate financial benefits through sale or conversion to other uses. Their resistance to Theodore's estate planning decisions reflected deeper philosophical disagreements about the purpose of inherited wealth and the responsibilities that accompanied financial resources. Marcus and Carmen viewed inheritance as compensation for genetic relationships rather than stewardship opportunities that required continued commitment to values and principles that had guided Theodore's success. The inclusion of specific recognition for my family status within the formal will created additional resistance, because it challenged their assumption that adoption represented a secondary form of family connection that deserved lesser consideration in inheritance proceedings. Theodore's explicit affirmation of my granddaughter status undermined their genetic supremacy arguments and established legal precedent for my equal participation in family asset distribution decisions. However, the most significant source of confusion and resistance emerged from the vague language surrounding my inheritance designation. Marcus and Carmen interpreted the, quote, educational resources and developmental opportunities description as evidence that Theodore had provided me with minimal inheritance benefits, while ensuring that substantial assets remained concentrated among his biological relatives. This interpretation led them to express satisfaction with what they perceived as appropriate inheritance distribution that acknowledged genetic relationships while providing token recognition for my adoptive status. Their premature celebration would prove thoroughly misguided, as Theodore's comprehensive estate plan began revealing its true structure and intentions. Helena Rodriguez concluded the formal will reading by presenting sealed envelopes that contained supplementary materials specific to each beneficiary's inheritance responsibilities and opportunities. These materials included detailed instructions, contact information for relevant professional advisors, and timelines for completing various administrative procedures required to finalize asset transfers and establish ongoing management structures. Marcus received materials related to property ownership transfer procedures, maintenance requirement specifications, and contact information for contractors and service providers who had maintained the Scottsdale residence according to Theodore's exacting standards. The documentation emphasized his responsibility for preserving the property's architectural integrity and environmental sustainability features rather than treating it as a simple real estate asset. Carmen's supplementary materials included comprehensive information about investment portfolio composition, historical performance data, regulatory compliance requirements, and contact details for financial advisors who had managed Theodore's retirement planning throughout the previous decade. The documentation stressed her fiduciary responsibilities and the importance of maintaining portfolio stability through conservative investment strategies. My sealed envelope contained materials that differed substantially from the administrative documentation provided to Marcus and Carmen. Rather than property transfer documents or financial management instructions, I received what appeared to be the beginning of an elaborate investigation process that would reveal Theodore's true estate planning intentions through systematic exploration of resources and information he had prepared specifically for my discovery. The initial materials included detailed workshop access instructions, inventory lists for materials and documents stored in various locations throughout the property, and a series of coded references that corresponded to specific storage areas containing additional information and resources. The complexity of these instructions indicated that Theodore had designed an extensive treasure hunt process that would test my understanding of his teaching methods and commitment to thorough investigation. The resistance and skepticism that characterized Marcus and Carmen's initial reaction to Theodore's estate plan reflected their failure to understand the comprehensive evaluation system he had developed to assess family members' character, capabilities, and commitment to continuing his legacy. They interpreted the formal will's provisions as evidence of successful inheritance claim outcomes, rather than recognizing them as the preliminary stage of a more complex assessment process. Their satisfaction with the perceived inheritance distribution prevented them from questioning whether Theodore's estate planning might include additional elements that had not been revealed through the formal reading procedures. This oversight would prove costly as they focused on immediate asset access rather than investigating potential additional inheritance opportunities that required demonstrated understanding and sustained commitment. The supplementary materials each beneficiary received provided the first indication that Theodore's estate plan included evaluation mechanisms that would test their responses to inherited responsibilities and their approaches to managing resources according to his established principles and practices. Those who demonstrated appropriate understanding and commitment would discover additional opportunities for inheritance benefits, while those who failed these evaluations would find their initial allocations represented the full extent of their inheritance rights. The resistance patterns that emerged immediately following the will reading revealed fundamental character differences among family members that would influence their success in navigating Theodore's comprehensive evaluation system. Marcus and Carmen's focus on immediate gratification and minimal responsibility contrasted sharply with my approach of careful investigation and systematic exploration of all available information and resources. Theodore had anticipated these divergent responses and structured his estate plan to reward thorough investigation, patient exploration, and demonstrated commitment to understanding his comprehensive legacy rather than simply claiming immediate access to visible assets. The formal will reading represented only the initial phase of an inheritance process that would ultimately distribute resources based on earned merit, rather than genetic entitlement or expressed expectations. The skepticism that Marcus and Carmen expressed regarding the workshop community program reflected their failure to understand Theodore's commitment to knowledge transfer and community service as essential elements of meaningful legacy preservation. Their resistance to trustee responsibilities indicated they viewed inherited assets as personal benefits, rather than stewardship opportunities that required ongoing dedication to principles and purposes that had guided Theodore's remarkable achievements. As the morning progressed and I began exploring the investigative process Theodore had designed for my inheritance discovery, the contrast between our approaches to inherited opportunity became increasingly apparent. While Marcus and Carmen focused on accessing immediate benefits from their inheritance allocations, I recognized that Theodore's comprehensive estate plan required patient exploration and systematic investigation to reveal its full scope and true intentions. The resistance and skepticism that characterized their initial responses to Theodore's estate planning decisions would prevent them from discovering additional inheritance opportunities that required demonstrated understanding of his values and commitment to continuing his legacy through appropriate stewardship of inherited resources and responsibilities. The afternoon following the formal will reading marked the beginning of my systematic investigation into Theodore's comprehensive inheritance plan, a process that would reveal the extraordinary depth of preparation he had undertaken to ensure his legacy reached worthy recipients. While Marcus and Carmen focused on accessing their immediate inheritance benefits, I embarked on the methodical exploration that Theodore had designed to test my understanding of his teaching methods and commitment to thorough investigation. The sealed envelope I had received from Helena Rodriguez contained the first phase of an elaborate educational journey that Theodore had constructed over several years. The initial materials included detailed architectural drawings of his workshop facility that identified storage locations, hidden compartments, and organizational systems that were invisible to casual observers, but revealed systematic preparation for comprehensive knowledge transfer. The workshop drawings indicated that Theodore had modified the building's interior structure to accommodate specialized storage areas that protected important documents, preserved historical materials, and organized resources according to logical sequences that would guide an investigator through progressive levels of complexity and understanding. These modifications represented significant investment in both time and resources, demonstrating Theodore's serious commitment to ensuring his knowledge and wisdom would transfer effectively to appropriate recipients. The first storage area I investigated contained comprehensive documentation of Theodore's business development process, spanning his evolution from individual craftsman to successful entrepreneur who had built a sustainable operation based on quality, integrity, and customer service principles. The materials included financial records, customer correspondence, project documentation, and strategic planning documents that revealed his methodical approach to business growth and market development. These business records demonstrated Theodore's understanding that sustainable success required systematic planning, careful resource management, and consistent execution of strategies that created long-term value, rather than pursuing short-term profit opportunities that might compromise quality standards or customer relationships. His documentation showed how he had navigated economic challenges, adapted to market changes, and maintained profitability while adhering to ethical principles that guided his professional conduct. The business development materials also revealed Theodore's commitment to continuous learning and professional improvement throughout his career. He had maintained extensive files of industry publications, technical manuals, regulatory updates, and competitive analysis reports that enabled him to remain current with evolving standards and emerging opportunities within the construction and furniture manufacturing sectors. The second phase of my investigation focused on materials that documented Theodore's community involvement and social responsibility initiatives. He had maintained detailed records of charitable contributions, volunteer activities, educational programs, and mentorship relationships that revealed his understanding that business success created obligations to contribute to broader community welfare and social improvement. These community service records demonstrated Theodore's belief that expertise and resources should be shared with others who could benefit from knowledge transfer and skill development opportunities. His involvement included teaching woodworking classes at community colleges, providing pro bono construction consultation for nonprofit organizations, and mentoring young entrepreneurs who were developing craft-based businesses. The community service documentation revealed that Theodore had invested hundreds of hours annually in activities that generated no direct financial return but created lasting benefits for individuals and organizations throughout the Phoenix metropolitan area. His approach to community involvement reflected the same systematic planning and quality standards that characterized his business operations, ensuring that his volunteer contributions created genuine value rather than superficial participation that served primarily to enhance his public reputation. The third storage area contained materials that would prove most significant for understanding Theodore's inheritance planning strategy. These documents included comprehensive assessments of family relationships, detailed observations about individual character traits, and systematic evaluation of each family member's potential for continuing his legacy through appropriate stewardship of inherited resources and responsibilities. Theodore's family assessment materials revealed that he had been conducting informal evaluation processes for several years, documenting specific incidents that demonstrated character strengths or weaknesses among his relatives. The documentation included both positive examples of supportive behavior and concerning patterns that indicated priorities inconsistent with responsible asset management or family relationship maintenance. The evaluation records showed that Theodore had paid careful attention to how family members responded to his health challenges, their approaches to requesting financial assistance, their expressions of gratitude for his support and guidance, and their interest in understanding his work and business philosophy. These observations had enabled him to develop comprehensive character profiles that informed his inheritance planning decisions. My own evaluation file contained extensive documentation of workshop sessions, business discussions, community service participation, and family interaction observations that revealed Theodore's systematic assessment of my development, commitment levels, and alignment with his values and principles. The records demonstrated his recognition of my genuine interest in his work and wisdom, rather than simply viewing him as a source of financial benefit. The documentation included specific examples of instances when I had provided assistance during his health challenges, expressed appreciation for his mentorship and guidance, demonstrated responsibility in managing borrowed tools or equipment, and shown initiative in applying his teachings to my own professional and personal development activities. Theodore's preparation for knowledge transfer extended beyond simple documentation to include comprehensive instructional materials that would guide recipients through systematic learning processes designed to develop capabilities necessary for effective inheritance management. These educational resources reflected his understanding that meaningful legacy preservation required not only transferring assets, but ensuring that recipients possessed appropriate knowledge and skills for responsible stewardship. The instructional materials covered advanced business management principles, estate planning strategies, community leadership approaches, and ethical frameworks for making decisions that balanced personal interests with broader social responsibilities. Theodore had organized these materials according to progressive complexity levels that would enable recipients to develop understanding gradually while applying learning to practical situations that demonstrated competence and commitment. The workshop facility itself represented a crucial component of Theodore's preparation strategy. He had designed and constructed the building to serve not only as a functional workspace, but as a comprehensive learning environment that could support extended educational programs for individuals committed to mastering traditional craftsmanship techniques and sustainable construction methods. The workshop equipment included not only standard woodworking tools but specialized machinery, precision instruments, and technological systems that enabled sophisticated project execution while maintaining safety standards and quality control protocols. Theodore had invested significantly in acquiring tools and equipment that would remain useful for decades, while providing learning opportunities that reflected current industry standards and emerging technological capabilities. The workshop also contained an extensive library of reference materials, technical manuals, design resources, and historical documentation that supported comprehensive education in both traditional craftsmanship methods and contemporary construction techniques. These materials represented years of careful acquisition and organization, demonstrating Theodore's commitment to creating educational resources that would serve multiple generations of learners. Theodore's preparation included systematic documentation of his teaching methodologies, learning assessment approaches, and skill development progressions that had proven effective during his mentorship activities, with apprentices, community college students, and family members who showed genuine interest in mastering his craft knowledge and business principles. The teaching materials revealed that Theodore had developed sophisticated understanding of how individuals with different learning styles and experience levels could most effectively acquire complex technical and business skills. His instructional approaches emphasized hands-on application combined with theoretical understanding, ensuring that students developed both practical competence and conceptual knowledge necessary for adapting skills to diverse situations and challenges. The methodology documentation included assessment criteria for evaluating student progress, intervention strategies for addressing learning difficulties, and advancement protocols for recognizing achievement levels that qualified students for increased responsibility and independence. These systematic approaches reflected Theodore's professional understanding that effective education required structured processes, rather than informal knowledge sharing that might overlook important development areas. Theodore's preparation also encompassed legal and financial structures that would support inheritance transfer, while protecting assets from recipients who might lack appropriate commitment or competence for effective stewardship. He had worked with estate planning attorneys, financial advisors, and business consultants to create frameworks that balanced asset protection with accessibility for worthy recipients. These legal structures included trust arrangements, corporate entities, partnership agreements, and contractual provisions that would enable progressive asset transfer based on demonstrated performance, rather than automatic inheritance distribution, according to conventional genetic priorities. The complexity of these arrangements reflected Theodore's understanding that meaningful legacy preservation required sophisticated planning that anticipated various potential outcomes and recipient responses. The financial preparation included not only asset accumulation, but strategic positioning that would enable inherited resources to continue generating benefits for multiple generations, while supporting ongoing community service activities and educational programs that reflected Theodore's values and priorities. His approach to wealth management emphasized sustainability and social responsibility, rather than simply maximizing returns or preserving capital for personal consumption. As I progressed through the systematic investigation that Theodore had designed, the extraordinary scope of his preparation became increasingly apparent. He had invested years in creating comprehensive systems for knowledge transfer, character evaluation, and resource management that would ensure his legacy continued through individuals who demonstrated genuine understanding of his principles and commitment to continuing his community service and craftsmanship traditions. The hidden preparation that Theodore had undertaken represented one of the most sophisticated inheritance planning strategies I had ever encountered, reflecting his understanding that meaningful legacy preservation required much more than simple asset distribution, according to conventional family expectations or genetic relationships. His comprehensive approach demanded that potential recipients demonstrate worthiness through sustained commitment, proven character, and genuine understanding of the responsibilities that accompanied inherited resources and opportunities. The late afternoon Arizona sun cast long shadows through the workshop windows as I completed my systematic investigation of the third storage area, where Theodore's family assessment materials had revealed the comprehensive evaluation system he had developed over several years. The methodical approach to my investigation was about to yield the first significant breakthrough in understanding the true scope of his inheritance planning strategy. The breakthrough occurred when I discovered a locked cedar chest positioned beneath the primary workbench, concealed behind carefully arranged tool storage systems that made it invisible to casual observation. The chest represented Theodore's approach to hiding the most valuable elements in plain sight, while ensuring that only dedicated investigators would discover their existence through patient and thorough exploration. The key to the cedar chest had been included among the materials in my sealed envelope from Helena Rodriguez, though its purpose had not been immediately apparent among the various coded references and inventory lists Theodore had prepared. The key's discovery represented the first validation that my systematic investigation was proceeding according to Theodore's intended sequence, and that I possessed the dedication necessary to uncover his comprehensive planning structure. Opening the cedar chest revealed materials that fundamentally altered my understanding of Theodore's estate planning intentions, and the scope of resources he had accumulated through decades of careful business management and strategic investment activity. The chest contained legal documents, financial records, and property deeds that demonstrated Theodore's wealth extended far beyond the assets revealed during the formal will reading. The primary document in the cedar chest established Theodore as the principal owner of Castellano Holdings, a private investment company that controlled substantial real estate properties throughout Arizona, Nevada, and California. The corporation had been structured to operate with minimal public visibility, while generating consistent returns through carefully selected commercial and residential development projects. Castellano Holdings owned office buildings in downtown Phoenix, retail complexes in Scottsdale, industrial facilities in Tucson, and residential developments in Las Vegas and Sacramento. The portfolio represented Theodore's systematic expansion beyond individual craftsmanship into large-scale construction and property management activities that had generated significant wealth accumulation over the previous 2 decades. The corporate documentation revealed that Theodore had served as chief executive officer while maintaining his furniture craftsmanship business as both personal passion and public identity that concealed his extensive involvement in major commercial development projects. His ability to manage both individual craftwork and large-scale business operations demonstrated remarkable versatility and strategic thinking that had enabled him to achieve success across multiple industry sectors. The financial records in the cedar chest documented Theodore's progression from individual craftsman to substantial real estate investor, through careful reinvestment of craftsmanship business profits into property acquisition and development opportunities. His approach had emphasized acquiring undervalued properties in emerging markets, where his construction expertise enabled him to identify improvement opportunities that other investors overlooked. The investment strategy revealed Theodore's understanding that sustainable wealth accumulation required diversification beyond individual business operations, while maintaining involvement in activities that utilized his core competencies and provided personal satisfaction. His real estate investments had focused on properties where his construction knowledge created competitive advantages in evaluation, improvement, and management activities. The breakthrough discovery of Castellano Holdings represented more than simple asset revelation. The corporate structure included specific provisions for management succession that would transfer operational control to individuals who demonstrated appropriate business competence and commitment to continuing Theodore's ethical standards and community service priorities. The succession planning documents identified specific criteria for evaluating potential corporate leadership candidates, including technical competence in construction and real estate management, demonstrated commitment to community service activities, proven ability to maintain ethical business practices under pressure, and alignment with corporate values that emphasized long-term sustainability over short-term profit maximization. The management succession framework included comprehensive evaluation processes that would test candidates through progressive responsibility assignments, while providing mentorship and skill development opportunities that prepared qualified individuals for effective corporate leadership. The system reflected Theodore's understanding that successful business transition required systematic preparation rather than automatic inheritance based on family relationships. The cedar chest also contained personal correspondence between Theodore and various business associates, financial advisors, and community leaders that revealed the extent of respect and recognition he had earned throughout his professional career. The letters documented his reputation for integrity, competence, and community commitment that had enabled him to participate in major development projects while maintaining relationships with clients who valued ethical business practices above purely financial considerations. The correspondence revealed that Theodore had served on numerous community development boards, charitable organization committees, and industry standards panels, where his expertise and judgment had influenced important decisions affecting regional economic development and construction industry practices. His involvement had extended far beyond individual business operations to encompass broader leadership responsibilities that reflected his understanding of civic duty and social responsibility. The breakthrough moment crystallized as I recognized that Theodore's inheritance planning strategy had been designed to identify family members who possessed not only personal character and values alignment, but also the business competence necessary to assume leadership responsibilities within Castellano Holdings while continuing his community service and charitable activities. The discovery revealed that my systematic investigation of his workshop materials represented the initial phase of a comprehensive evaluation process that would determine my qualifications for inheriting operational control of substantial business assets and community leadership responsibilities. The investigation itself served as both learning opportunity and competency assessment that demonstrated my approach to complex problem-solving and commitment to thorough preparation. The cedar chest materials included detailed business plans for expanding Castellano Holdings operations into sustainable construction and renewable energy development sectors that aligned with my professional expertise in sustainable architecture and environmental construction technologies. Theodore had researched these expansion opportunities extensively while waiting for appropriate leadership succession that could execute the strategic vision effectively. The expansion plans represented Theodore's recognition that successful business evolution required leadership that combined traditional construction competence with contemporary understanding of environmental sustainability, regulatory compliance, and community development principles. The strategic vision reflected his belief that construction industry leadership carried responsibilities for promoting practices that created long-term community benefits rather than simply generating maximum returns for investors. The business development materials revealed that Theodore had spent considerable time researching sustainable construction technologies, renewable energy systems, and green building certification processes that could position Castellano Holdings as a regional leader in environmentally responsible development practices. His research had identified specific market opportunities where sustainable construction expertise could create competitive advantages while supporting community environmental objectives. The breakthrough discovery also revealed that Theodore had established educational scholarship programs, community development initiatives, and charitable foundations that would require ongoing management and strategic oversight from individuals who understood his values and commitment to social responsibility. These programs represented substantial financial commitments that would continue his legacy of community service while providing practical benefits for individuals and organizations throughout the region. The scholarship programs focused on supporting students who demonstrated both academic achievement and commitment to community service, with particular emphasis on individuals pursuing education in construction trades, architectural design, and sustainable development fields that reflected Theodore's professional interests and expertise areas. The community development initiatives included funding for affordable housing projects, historic preservation activities, and small business development programs that created opportunities for individuals and families to achieve economic stability while contributing to broader community welfare. These programs reflected Theodore's understanding that business success created obligations to support others who faced economic challenges or lacked access to traditional development resources. The charitable foundations provided ongoing funding for educational programs, healthcare initiatives, and social services that addressed community needs while promoting values of self-reliance, mutual support, and civic responsibility that had guided Theodore's personal and professional development throughout his remarkable career. The first breakthrough moment established that Theodore's inheritance planning encompassed far more than asset distribution to family members. His comprehensive strategy was designed to identify and develop leadership successors who could continue his business operations, community service activities, and charitable programs while expanding these initiatives to address evolving community needs and opportunities. The breakthrough revealed that my exclusion from the formal will reading had positioned me to discover inheritance opportunities that extended far beyond the assets distributed to Marcus and Carmen through conventional probate procedures. Theodore's true legacy required recipients who possessed both personal character and professional competence necessary for effective stewardship of substantial resources and community responsibilities. The systematic investigation that had led to this breakthrough validated Theodore's teaching methods and demonstrated my commitment to thorough preparation, careful analysis, and persistent effort in addressing complex challenges. The discovery process itself had served as practical education in business research, legal document analysis, and strategic thinking that prepared me for the leadership responsibilities that Theodore had envisioned for his chosen successor. The breakthrough moment transformed my understanding of the inheritance dispute that had seemed to exclude me from Theodore's legacy. Rather than representing rejection or marginalization, my position outside conventional family inheritance expectations had created opportunities to discover resources and responsibilities that reflected genuine preparation for continuing Theodore's remarkable achievements in business leadership and community service. The discovery of Castellano Holdings had fundamentally altered the landscape of Theodore's inheritance structure, yet this breakthrough represented merely the initial phase of increasingly complex challenges that would test my understanding of business management, legal frameworks, and strategic decision-making under substantial pressure. The evening following my cedar chest discovery brought the first indications that Theodore's comprehensive evaluation system would escalate in sophistication and difficulty. The business documentation I had uncovered included specific instructions for initiating contact with James Morrison, the senior partner at Morrison & Associates, a Phoenix-based law firm that specialized in complex corporate transactions and estate planning for high-net-worth individuals. Morrison had served as Theodore's primary legal advisor for corporate matters and possessed comprehensive understanding of the succession planning framework that would govern Castellano Holdings' management transition. My telephone conversation with Morrison revealed that Theodore had anticipated the timeline of my investigation with remarkable precision. Morrison had been expecting my contact within 48 hours of the formal will reading, and he had prepared materials that would guide me through the next phase of Theodore's evaluation process, while introducing substantially more complex business and legal challenges than I had previously encountered. Morrison explained that Theodore's succession planning included progressive competency assessments that would evaluate my capabilities across multiple business management areas, including financial analysis, regulatory compliance, strategic planning, and stakeholder relationship management. These assessments would be conducted through real business situations that required immediate decisions with genuine consequences for Castellano Holdings operations and community commitments. The escalation began with Morrison presenting me with a time-sensitive acquisition opportunity that had emerged just days before Theodore's death. A commercial property development company in Tucson had encountered financial difficulties and was seeking to divest several partially completed projects through expedited sale procedures that required rapid due diligence and decision-making processes. The acquisition opportunity represented exactly the type of complex business challenge that Theodore had used throughout his career to evaluate potential business partners and key personnel. The properties included office buildings, retail centers, and mixed-use developments that could provide substantial returns if managed effectively, but also carried significant risks related to construction completion, tenant acquisition, and market conditions. Morrison provided me with comprehensive financial documentation, engineering reports, market analysis studies, and legal assessments that comprised several hundred pages of technical information requiring systematic analysis and strategic evaluation within a compressed timeline that reflected actual business decision-making pressures. The complexity of this material far exceeded anything I had previously encountered in my architectural practice. The evaluation process demanded integration of multiple analytical frameworks including construction cost estimation, market demand forecasting, regulatory compliance assessment, and financial return modeling that would determine whether the acquisition opportunity aligned with Castellano Holdings' investment criteria and Theodore's strategic vision for company growth and community development impact. The challenge complexity was compounded by competing interests among various stakeholders involved in the property divestiture process. Other potential buyers included established real estate investment firms with substantial financial resources and extensive experience in complex commercial property acquisitions. My ability to compete effectively would depend on leveraging Theodore's business relationships and demonstrated commitment to community development principles that distinguished Castellano Holdings from purely profit-focused competitors. Morrison explained that Theodore had specifically structured this evaluation to test my ability to function effectively under substantial pressure while maintaining ethical standards and community commitment priorities that had guided his business decisions throughout his career. The acquisition challenge would reveal whether I possess the combination of analytical competence, strategic thinking, and values alignment necessary for successful corporate leadership succession. The financial analysis component required detailed evaluation of construction costs, completion timelines, market rental rates, occupancy projections, financing alternatives, and return calculations that would determine the economic viability of each property within the acquisition portfolio. This analysis demanded integration of my architectural expertise with business financial modeling capabilities that I had developed through my sustainable construction projects but had never applied to investments of this magnitude. The regulatory compliance assessment involved reviewing zoning restrictions, environmental regulations, building codes, and permit requirements that would influence development completion costs and timeline feasibility. My professional experience with regulatory frameworks provided advantages in this evaluation area, though the scale and complexity of the commercial properties presented challenges that exceeded residential and small commercial projects I had previously managed. The strategic planning component required evaluation of how the acquisition would align with Theodore's vision for Castellano Holdings' expansion into sustainable construction and renewable energy sectors. The properties would need to serve as platforms for demonstrating innovative construction technologies and environmental sustainability practices that could influence broader industry adoption while generating competitive returns for investors. Morrison also revealed that the acquisition decision would be complicated by community stakeholder concerns about development impact on local neighborhoods, traffic patterns, and municipal infrastructure systems. Theodore had established community engagement protocols that required consultation with neighborhood associations, municipal planning departments, and community service organizations before proceeding with major development projects. The community engagement requirements represented Theodore's commitment to ensuring that business development activities created positive community impact rather than simply generating maximum financial returns. This approach distinguished Castellano Holdings from competitors who prioritized profit optimization without considering broader social and environmental consequences of their development activities. The escalating challenge included coordination with existing Castellano Holdings management personnel, who had worked closely with Theodore throughout the company's development and who possessed institutional knowledge essential for effective decision-making and operational continuity. These experienced professionals would evaluate my leadership capabilities while determining whether they could support management transition that maintained company culture and strategic direction. The management team included Sarah Chen, the chief financial officer who had overseen financial planning and investment analysis for Castellano Holdings throughout the previous decade. Chen possessed comprehensive understanding of company financial systems, investor relationships, and regulatory compliance requirements that would be essential for successful acquisition completion and ongoing property management operations. The team also included Roberto Valdez, the director of construction operations who managed project development, contractor relationships, and quality control systems that ensured completed properties met Theodore's exacting standards for craftsmanship and environmental sustainability. Valdez's expertise would be crucial for evaluating construction completion requirements and cost estimation for the acquisition properties. Maria Santos served as Director of Community Relations, managing relationships with municipal authorities, community organizations, and tenant associations that influenced company reputation and operational effectiveness within local markets. Santos understood Theodore's community engagement philosophy and would evaluate whether my leadership approach maintained appropriate balance between business objectives and social responsibility commitments. The challenge escalation also included pressure from external competitors who had learned about my emergence as potential Castellano Holdings successor and who questioned my qualifications for managing substantial commercial real estate operations. These competitors included established regional development companies that had previously sought partnerships or acquisition opportunities with Theodore, but had been rejected due to philosophical differences about community development priorities. Morrison explained that Theodore had anticipated these competitive challenges and had structured his succession planning to include legal protections and business relationship frameworks that would support management transition while preventing external interference or manipulation attempts. However, these protections would only prove effective if I demonstrated genuine competence in managing the escalating business challenges that tested my capabilities across multiple operational areas. The time pressure associated with the acquisition opportunity created additional complexity because effective decision-making required not only thorough analysis but also rapid relationship building with property sellers, financing institutions, regulatory authorities, and community stakeholders who would influence transaction success. These relationship management challenges tested interpersonal skills and strategic communication capabilities that differed substantially from technical analysis competencies. The financing requirements for the acquisition exceeded my personal resources and would require accessing Castellano Holdings' credit facilities and investor relationships that Theodore had developed through years of successful business operations and demonstrated financial performance. My ability to maintain these financial relationships while establishing personal credibility would determine whether adequate funding could be secured within the compressed timeline required for completing the transaction. The legal complexity of the acquisition included reviewing purchase agreements, financing contracts, regulatory compliance documentation, and insurance requirements that comprised hundreds of pages of technical legal language requiring careful analysis to identify potential risks and negotiation opportunities. Morrison provided legal guidance, but ultimate decision-making responsibility remained mine as potential successor to Theodore's leadership position. The escalating challenges revealed that Theodore's succession planning had been designed to evaluate leadership capabilities under conditions that closely approximated the actual pressures and complexity that characterized successful commercial real estate development operations. The evaluation process would determine whether I possessed not only personal character and values alignment but also professional competence necessary for managing substantial business operations and community responsibilities. The acquisition opportunity represented Theodore's understanding that effective leadership development required practical experience with consequential decisions, rather than simply theoretical knowledge or demonstrated commitment to appropriate principles. The challenge complexity would reveal whether my architectural expertise, business development experience, and systematic problem-solving approach could scale effectively to corporate leadership responsibilities that extended far beyond individual project management activities. As the evening progressed and I continued analyzing the acquisition documentation, the full scope of Theodore's escalating evaluation system became increasingly apparent. He had designed challenges that would test every aspect of leadership competence while providing practical experience that prepared successful candidates for the substantial responsibilities that accompanied inheritance of his business operations and community service commitments. The acquisition opportunity that Morrison had presented demanded immediate development of professional relationships and strategic alliances that would enable effective decision-making and successful transaction completion within the compressed timeline Theodore had established. The complexity of managing multiple stakeholder relationships while maintaining analytical precision required systematic approach to support system construction that would sustain me through increasingly demanding evaluation phases. The first critical relationship involved establishing credibility with the existing Castellano Holdings management team, whose expertise and institutional knowledge would prove essential for navigating the acquisition process successfully. Sarah Chen, the chief financial officer, possessed comprehensive understanding of company financial systems and investment criteria that would inform my evaluation of the acquisition opportunity while ensuring alignment with established strategic priorities. My initial meeting with Chen revealed both the depth of her professional competence and her genuine concern about management transition effectiveness. Theodore had recruited Chen from a prominent Phoenix investment firm where she had specialized in commercial real estate analysis and portfolio management for institutional clients. Her decision to join Castellano Holdings had reflected Theodore's persuasive vision for combining sustainable business practices with community development objectives. Chen's approach to financial analysis reflected Theodore's emphasis on long-term value creation rather than short-term profit maximization. Her evaluation frameworks incorporated not only traditional return calculations, but also assessment of community impact, environmental sustainability benefits, and potential for supporting local economic development initiatives that distinguished Castellano Holdings from conventional real estate investment companies. The financial analysis Chen provided for the acquisition opportunity demonstrated sophisticated understanding of market conditions, regulatory requirements, and construction cost factors that would influence project viability and return potential. Her presentation revealed that Theodore had maintained rigorous analytical standards, while ensuring that business decisions supported broader community welfare objectives rather than purely financial considerations. Chen's evaluation of my leadership potential focused primarily on analytical competence and decision-making consistency under pressure rather than personal relationship factors. She emphasized that Theodore had valued logical analysis and systematic problem-solving approaches above interpersonal skills or charismatic leadership qualities that might impress stakeholders without delivering substantive results. The relationship development with Chen required demonstrating genuine understanding of financial principles and strategic planning concepts that would enable effective collaboration while respecting her expertise and institutional knowledge. This balance between learning from her experience and establishing leadership credibility demanded careful attention to communication patterns and decision-making processes that would build mutual respect and professional confidence. Roberto Valdez, the director of construction operations, presented different relationship challenges that focused on practical implementation capabilities and understanding of construction industry complexities that would determine acquisition success. Valdez had worked in construction management for over 20 years before joining Castellano Holdings, where Theodore had attracted him through commitment to quality standards and innovative construction techniques that exceeded industry norms. Valdez's expertise encompassed both traditional construction methods and emerging sustainable building technologies that Theodore had pioneered within regional commercial development projects. His understanding of contractor relationships, regulatory compliance requirements, and quality control systems provided essential knowledge for evaluating construction completion requirements and cost estimation accuracy for the acquisition properties. The relationship with Valdez required demonstrating practical understanding of construction processes and realistic appreciation for implementation challenges that could affect project timelines and budget requirements. My architectural background provided foundation for these discussions, though the scale and complexity of commercial development projects demanded expanded understanding of management systems and operational procedures. Valdez's assessment of my leadership capabilities focused on realistic planning approaches and willingness to acknowledge expertise limitations while seeking appropriate guidance from experienced professionals. Theodore had emphasized the importance of collaborative decision-making processes that utilize team member expertise effectively rather than attempting to demonstrate comprehensive knowledge across all operational areas. Maria Santos, the director of community relations, represented the most complex relationship challenge because her role required balancing business objectives with community stakeholder expectations, while maintaining Theodore's reputation for ethical leadership and social responsibility commitment. Santos had extensive experience in municipal government and nonprofit organization management before Theodore recruited her to establish community engagement protocols for Castellano Holdings. Santos understood the intricate network of community organizations, regulatory authorities, and civic leaders that influence development project approval processes and ongoing operational success within local markets. Her relationships provided essential access to information and decision-making processes that could expedite regulatory compliance while ensuring community support for development activities. The relationship development with Santos required demonstrating genuine commitment to community development principles rather than superficial compliance with social responsibility expectations that some business leaders adopted for public relations purposes. Theodore's community engagement philosophy emphasized authentic partnership with local stakeholders rather than transactional approaches that minimized community input while pursuing maximum development returns. Santos evaluated my leadership potential through observation of communication approaches with community representatives, response to stakeholder concerns that might conflict with business objectives, and willingness to modify development plans based on legitimate community input rather than proceeding with predetermined strategies regardless of local impact considerations. The second critical support system component involved establishing relationships with external professional advisors who possessed specialized expertise essential for acquisition analysis and transaction completion. Morrison's law firm provided legal guidance, though additional expertise would be required for environmental assessment, engineering evaluation, and financial structuring that exceeded Castellano Holdings' internal capabilities. The environmental assessment required coordination with consulting firms that specialized in commercial property, environmental compliance, and sustainability certification processes. Theodore had established relationships with consultants who understood his commitment to environmental responsibility and who could evaluate acquisition properties according to standards that exceeded minimum regulatory requirements, while identifying improvement opportunities that would enhance long-term value. The engineering evaluation demanded consultation with structural engineers, mechanical systems specialists, and construction management professionals who could assess completion requirements and cost estimation accuracy for partially completed development projects. These technical assessments would determine whether acquisition properties represented viable investment opportunities or potential financial liabilities that exceeded available resources. The financial structuring component required establishing relationships with commercial lending institutions and investment partners who could provide acquisition funding while understanding Castellano Holdings' strategic objectives and community development priorities. Theodore had cultivated relationships with lenders who appreciated long-term value creation approaches, rather than demanding maximum short-term returns that might compromise project quality or community benefits. The third support system element involved developing communication channels with community stakeholders who would influence regulatory approval processes and ongoing operational success for acquired properties. These relationships required understanding local political dynamics, community development priorities, and stakeholder concerns that could affect project implementation timelines and community acceptance. The community engagement process revealed the extent of Theodore's reputation within Phoenix area development circles and the expectations that community leaders maintained regarding Castellano Holdings projects. Local officials and community organization representatives had developed trust in Theodore's commitment to quality development practices and community benefit considerations that distinguished his projects from typical commercial development activities. The relationship development with community stakeholders required demonstrating continuity with Theodore's community engagement philosophy while establishing personal credibility and communication effectiveness that would sustain these important relationships through management transition. This balance between honoring Theodore's legacy and establishing independent leadership presence demanded careful attention to stakeholder expectations and communication preferences. The support system development process also included establishing mentor relationships with business leaders who had experience managing complex commercial development operations and who could provide guidance during challenging decision-making situations. Morrison introduced me to several Phoenix area entrepreneurs who had built successful real estate development companies while maintaining ethical business practices and community involvement commitments. These mentor relationships provided access to experienced perspectives on industry challenges, regulatory navigation strategies, and stakeholder relationship management approaches that could inform my decision-making processes while providing emotional support during stressful evaluation periods. The mentors had worked with Theodore on various community development initiatives and understood his business philosophy and leadership approach. The mentor conversations revealed common challenges that business leaders encountered during growth transitions and succession planning processes. Their insights regarding decision-making under uncertainty, team management during organizational change, and maintaining strategic focus while managing multiple operational demands provided practical guidance for navigating Theodore's escalating evaluation system. The fourth support system component involved establishing relationships with industry professional organizations and continuing education resources that would support ongoing leadership development and keep me informed about emerging trends in sustainable construction, commercial development, and community planning that would influence Castellano Holdings' strategic positioning. Theodore had maintained active involvement in professional associations related to construction industry standards, environmental sustainability practices, and community development initiatives. His participation had provided access to industry intelligence and networking opportunities that supported business development while contributing to broader industry improvement efforts. The professional development relationships would ensure access to current information about regulatory changes, technological innovations, and market trends that would influence strategic planning and operational decision-making for Castellano Holdings. These resources would also provide opportunities for establishing industry relationships that could support business expansion while maintaining Theodore's reputation for ethical leadership and community commitment. The support system development process demonstrated that effective business leadership required comprehensive relationship networks that provided diverse expertise, multiple perspectives, and reliable resources for addressing complex challenges that exceeded individual knowledge and experience limitations. Theodore's succession planning had anticipated these relationship requirements and had structured evaluation processes that would test my ability to build and maintain essential professional connections. The systematic approach to support system construction reflected Theodore's understanding that sustainable business success depended on collaborative relationships rather than individual achievement alone. The evaluation process would determine whether I could effectively utilize team member expertise while establishing leadership credibility and maintaining strategic decision-making authority that would enable successful management of complex business operations and community responsibilities. The acquisition analysis had proceeded systematically for 3 intensive days when the first major setback emerged through circumstances that tested both my analytical capabilities and emotional resilience under severe pressure. The challenge arose not from external market conditions or competitive interference, but from a fundamental miscalculation in my assessment of the acquisition properties that threatened to disqualify me from Theodore's succession planning process entirely. The error became apparent during my detailed review of environmental assessment reports that had been conducted on the Tucson properties 6 months prior to their availability for acquisition. The consulting firm that had performed the initial environmental analysis had identified potential soil contamination issues at 2 of the commercial sites, but their reports had been ambiguous regarding the extent of remediation requirements and associated costs. My initial analysis had accepted the environmental consultants' preliminary cost estimates for soil remediation without conducting sufficient independent verification or seeking additional expert opinions that might have revealed the true scope of environmental challenges. This analytical shortcut reflected my inexperience with complex environmental compliance issues that could substantially affect commercial property development costs and regulatory approval timelines. The magnitude of my miscalculation became apparent when Roberto Valdez arranged for an independent environmental engineering firm to conduct updated assessments of the potentially contaminated sites. The new analysis revealed that soil contamination extended far deeper than initially estimated and included chemical compounds that would require specialized remediation procedures exceeding the preliminary cost estimates by more than $3 million. The expanded remediation requirements would eliminate projected returns from 2 of the 4 properties in the acquisition portfolio, transforming what had appeared to be a profitable investment opportunity into a potential financial liability that would consume substantial resources while generating minimal returns for Castellano Holdings. The environmental compliance costs would also extend project completion timelines by 12 to 18 months, delaying revenue generation and increasing financing expenses. The setback created immediate consequences that extended beyond the specific acquisition opportunity to encompass broader questions about my competence for managing complex commercial real estate investments. Sarah Chen expressed serious concerns about my analytical methodology and questioned whether my architectural experience provided adequate foundation for evaluating large-scale commercial development projects with sophisticated risk factors. Chen's criticism focused on my failure to conduct comprehensive due diligence procedures that would have identified environmental compliance risks before committing substantial analytical resources to financial modeling and strategic planning activities. Her assessment suggested that my approach reflected theoretical understanding of investment analysis principles without practical experience managing the systematic verification processes essential for commercial real estate decision-making. The criticism was professionally devastating because it called into question not only my specific analytical error, but my fundamental approach to business decision-making under uncertainty. Chen emphasized that Theodore had built Castellano Holdings' reputation on meticulous due diligence and conservative risk assessment that protected company resources, while ensuring project success rates that exceeded industry averages. Roberto Valdez provided additional perspective on the setback that revealed the broader implications for my leadership evaluation. He explained that construction industry experience had taught him to assume that initial assessments consistently underestimated project complexity and cost requirements, particularly for environmental compliance and regulatory approval processes that involved multiple government agencies with overlapping jurisdictions. Valdez's approach to project evaluation included systematic skepticism regarding preliminary reports and consultant assessments, combined with independent verification processes that often revealed hidden costs or regulatory requirements not captured in initial documentation. His methodology reflected hard-earned understanding that commercial development projects required conservative assumptions and comprehensive contingency planning to achieve financial projections. The setback also affected my relationships with external advisors and community stakeholders who had begun to invest time and credibility in supporting the acquisition process. The environmental consulting firm that had conducted the updated assessments questioned why their initial analysis had not been properly verified before proceeding with detailed financial modeling and strategic planning activities. Community stakeholders who had been briefed on the potential acquisition expressed concerns about environmental remediation timelines and the possibility that contaminated sites might remain undeveloped for extended periods while regulatory compliance procedures continued. Their questions revealed that Theodore's reputation for timely project completion and environmental responsibility created expectations for rigorous due diligence that I had failed to meet. The emotional impact of this professional setback was compounded by recognition that Theodore's succession planning process was designed to identify candidates who could maintain his standards for analytical rigor and strategic decision-making under pressure. The environmental assessment error represented exactly the type of oversight that could damage Castellano Holdings' reputation and financial performance if repeated in actual business operations. The recovery process began with systematic analysis of my analytical methodology to identify specific procedural gaps that had contributed to the environmental assessment oversight. This self-evaluation required honest acknowledgement of inexperience with complex commercial development projects, while developing corrective approaches that would prevent similar errors in future evaluations. Morrison provided guidance regarding standard due diligence procedures for commercial real estate acquisitions that included multiple independent assessments, systematic verification of consultant reports, and conservative contingency planning for regulatory compliance and environmental remediation requirements. His instruction revealed the sophisticated analytical frameworks that Theodore had developed through decades of successful commercial development experience. The recovery strategy also included direct conversations with each member of the Castellano Holdings management team to acknowledge the analytical error, while demonstrating commitment to learning from the setback and implementing improved due diligence procedures for future investment evaluations. These discussions required balancing personal accountability with professional confidence that would maintain team respect and cooperation. Sarah Chen's response to my acknowledgement of the environmental assessment error revealed important insights about Theodore's leadership philosophy and the team culture he had established within Castellano Holdings. Rather than expressing disappointment or criticism, Chen emphasized that Theodore had consistently used analytical errors as learning opportunities that strengthened future decision-making capabilities rather than disqualifying individuals from leadership consideration. Chen shared examples of significant mistakes that Theodore himself had made during his early career in commercial development, including environmental compliance oversights and construction cost miscalculations that had required substantial financial resources to resolve. She explained that Theodore's approach to error management focused on systematic learning and procedural improvement, rather than punitive responses that might discourage appropriate risk-taking and future business decisions. The conversation with Chen revealed that Theodore's succession planning evaluation criteria included assessment of how candidates responded to significant setbacks, rather than simply measuring their ability to avoid errors through conservative decision-making approaches. His evaluation system recognized that effective leadership required resilience, learning capability, and strategic adaptation under pressure, rather than perfect analytical performance alone. Roberto Valdez provided additional perspective on recovery strategies that reflected his extensive experience managing construction projects where unexpected challenges and cost overruns were standard operational realities rather than exceptional circumstances. His approach to setback management emphasized systematic problem-solving and resource reallocation, rather than abandoning projects when initial assumptions proved inaccurate. Valdez suggested that the environmental remediation challenges could be addressed through creative financing strategies and regulatory compliance approaches that might transform apparent liabilities into competitive advantages if managed effectively. His optimistic perspective on problem-solving reflected Theodore's philosophy that business challenges often contained hidden opportunities for those willing to invest effort in developing innovative solutions. The recovery process also included expanded consultation with environmental engineering specialists and regulatory compliance experts, who could provide comprehensive assessment of remediation requirements and realistic cost estimation for the contaminated sites. These consultations revealed potential approaches for managing environmental compliance that could reduce costs while meeting regulatory requirements more efficiently than standard remediation procedures. The environmental specialists introduced innovative soil treatment technologies and regulatory compliance strategies that could accelerate remediation timelines while reducing costs through more effective contamination removal processes. These technological solutions represented exactly the type of innovative approaches that Theodore had pioneered throughout his career, when standard industry practices proved inadequate for specific project requirements. Maria Santos contributed to the recovery strategy by identifying community development opportunities that could transform environmental remediation activities into positive community relations initiatives that demonstrated Castellano Holdings' commitment to environmental responsibility and community welfare. Her approach reflected Theodore's understanding that business challenges could often be converted into community benefit opportunities through creative strategic thinking. Santos proposed community engagement programs that would involve local environmental organizations and educational institutions in monitoring remediation progress while providing practical learning opportunities for students pursuing environmental science and engineering education. These programs would demonstrate Castellano Holdings' commitment to transparency and community involvement while generating positive publicity that enhanced company reputation. The financial implications of the environmental remediation requirements demanded revised acquisition strategies that could accommodate increased costs while maintaining acceptable return projections for Castellano Holdings investors. This financial restructuring required creative approaches to property valuation, financing arrangements, and development timelines that would preserve project viability, despite substantially increased complexity. The recovery strategy included negotiation with property sellers regarding price adjustments that would reflect the true scope of environmental compliance requirements, while sharing remediation risks between buyers and sellers according to appropriate legal frameworks. These negotiations required sophisticated understanding of commercial real estate law and environmental liability allocation that extended my legal knowledge into new areas of expertise. The setback and recovery process ultimately strengthened my relationship with the Castellano Holdings management team, while demonstrating resilience and learning capability that Theodore had identified as essential leadership qualities. The experience provided practical education in commercial development complexities that would prevent similar errors in future investment evaluations, while building confidence in systematic problem-solving approaches. The recovery also revealed the depth of support systems that Theodore had established within Castellano Holdings and throughout the Phoenix business community, where his reputation for ethical leadership and community commitment created networks of professionals willing to provide assistance and expertise during challenging situations. These support systems would prove essential for navigating future business challenges with greater confidence and effectiveness. The recovery from the environmental assessment setback required comprehensive refinement of my analytical methodology and strategic approach to complex commercial development evaluations. The lessons learned from this significant error provided foundation for developing more sophisticated due diligence procedures that would prevent similar oversights, while enabling more effective risk assessment and management capabilities essential for successful business leadership. The strategic refinement process began with systematic documentation of standard operating procedures for commercial property evaluation that incorporated multiple verification stages and independent expert consultations. These procedures reflected insights gained from conversations with the Castellano Holdings management team and external advisors who possessed extensive experience managing complex development projects with sophisticated risk profiles. Sarah Chin provided detailed guidance regarding financial analysis frameworks that included comprehensive sensitivity analysis and scenario planning approaches designed to account for various potential cost overruns and timeline extensions that commonly affected commercial development projects. Her methodology emphasized conservative assumptions and systematic contingency planning that protected company resources while maintaining realistic return projections. The refined financial analysis approach included multiple independent cost estimates for all major project components, with particular emphasis on regulatory compliance and environmental remediation requirements that had proven problematic in my initial evaluation. The methodology incorporated regular review and updating procedures that would identify cost escalation or timeline delays early enough to implement corrective measures without jeopardizing project viability. Roberto Valdez contributed to the strategic refinement through detailed instruction regarding construction industry evaluation standards and verification procedures that ensured accurate assessment of completion requirements and associated costs. His approach emphasized systematic skepticism regarding preliminary assessments and consultant reports, combined with independent verification through multiple expert sources. The construction evaluation methodology that Valdez recommended included site visits with qualified engineers and environmental specialists who could identify potential challenges and cost factors that might not be apparent from document review alone. These field assessments provided practical insights that complemented technical reports while revealing implementation issues that could affect project timelines and budget requirements. Maria Santos provided strategic refinement guidance regarding community engagement and regulatory approval processes that could significantly influence project success rates and completion timelines. Her expertise revealed that community relations management required systematic attention to stakeholder concerns and regulatory compliance approaches that exceeded minimum legal requirements. The community engagement methodology Santos developed included early consultation with local government officials, community organization representatives, and neighborhood associations who could provide valuable insights regarding potential opposition or support factors that would influence regulatory approval processes. These consultations enabled proactive address of community concerns while building stakeholder relationships that supported project implementation. This strategic refinement also encompassed enhanced risk management frameworks that would enable more effective identification and mitigation of potential challenges before they could significantly impact project outcomes. These risk management approaches reflected Theodore's philosophy that successful business operations required systematic preparation for various potential scenarios rather than optimistic assumptions about ideal project conditions. The risk management methodology included comprehensive assessment of regulatory changes, market condition fluctuations, contractor reliability issues, and financing availability factors that could affect project viability throughout extended development timelines. The assessment procedures incorporated regular monitoring and updating processes that would enable timely strategic adjustments when circumstances changed. The renewed effort in acquisition evaluation revealed additional opportunities within the original Tucson property portfolio that had been obscured by focus on the environmental compliance challenges. The systematic analysis identified properties with superior development potential that could offset reduced returns from the contaminated sites while maintaining overall portfolio viability, according to Castellano Holdings' investment criteria. The strategic refinement included innovative approaches to environmental remediation that could transform apparent liabilities into competitive advantages through advanced soil treatment technologies and sustainable development practices that exceeded standard industry approaches. These innovative solutions reflected Theodore's commitment to environmental responsibility while demonstrating business leadership in sustainable construction methods. The environmental remediation strategy incorporated partnership opportunities with technology companies and research institutions that were developing advanced soil treatment processes for commercial application. These partnerships would provide access to cutting-edge remediation technologies while creating opportunities for Castellano Holdings to establish leadership position in sustainable development practices. The refined acquisition strategy also included creative financing structures that would distribute environmental remediation costs across multiple stakeholder groups while maintaining acceptable return projections for primary investors. These financing approaches reflected sophisticated understanding of commercial real estate investment structures that enabled complex project implementation despite significant upfront costs. The financing strategy incorporated partnership opportunities with environmental remediation specialists and sustainability-focused investors who valued long-term environmental benefits alongside financial returns. These partnerships would provide additional expertise and financial resources while aligning project implementation with Theodore's community development and environmental responsibility priorities. The strategic refinement process revealed enhanced skill development opportunities that would strengthen my capabilities for managing increasingly complex business challenges throughout Theodore's succession planning evaluation. The intensive learning process had accelerated my understanding of commercial development complexities, while building confidence in systematic problem-solving approaches. The skill enhancement activities included advanced coursework in environmental compliance regulations, commercial real estate finance structures, and community development planning methodologies that would support more effective decision-making and stakeholder relationship management. These educational investments reflected commitment to continuous improvement that Theodore had identified as essential for effective business leadership. The renewed effort also encompassed expanded professional networking activities that would provide access to industry expertise and best practices information, essential for maintaining competitive advantages in complex commercial development markets. The networking strategy focused on building authentic relationships with professionals who shared Theodore's commitment to ethical business practices and community development objectives. The relationship-building efforts included active participation in industry conferences, professional association activities, and community development initiatives that would provide learning opportunities while contributing to broader industry improvement efforts. These activities reflected Theodore's philosophy that business success carried responsibilities for supporting industry advancement and community welfare. The strategic refinement included enhanced performance measurement systems that would enable systematic tracking of analytical accuracy and decision-making effectiveness throughout ongoing business operations. These measurement systems provided feedback mechanisms that would support continuous improvement while ensuring accountability for business outcomes and community impact. The performance measurement methodology incorporated regular review sessions with the Castellano Holdings management team and external advisors who could provide objective assessment of decision-making effectiveness and strategic planning capabilities. These review processes would identify areas requiring additional development, while recognizing successful implementation of improved analytical methodologies. The renewed effort revealed that the environmental assessment setback had provided valuable learning opportunities that strengthened my overall capabilities for managing complex business challenges. The systematic approach to recovery and strategic refinement demonstrated resilience and adaptation capabilities that Theodore had identified as essential leadership qualities for successful management of substantial business operations. The strategic refinement also encompassed enhanced communication strategies that would enable more effective coordination with management team members, external advisors, and community stakeholders, who provided essential expertise and resources for complex project implementation. These communication approaches emphasized collaborative decision-making while maintaining clear leadership authority and accountability. The communication strategy development included systematic attention to stakeholder information requirements and decision-making processes that would ensure appropriate consultation while maintaining project implementation timelines. The methodology balanced thorough stakeholder engagement with efficient decision-making procedures that prevented unnecessary delays or resource consumption. The refined strategic approach also included comprehensive succession planning considerations that would ensure continuity of improved analytical methodologies and risk management approaches beyond individual project implementation. These succession planning elements reflected Theodore's understanding that sustainable business improvement required systematic knowledge transfer and procedural documentation, rather than dependence on individual expertise alone. The succession planning methodology included detailed documentation of analytical procedures, risk assessment frameworks, and stakeholder relationship management approaches that would enable effective knowledge transfer to future management team members. These documentation efforts would preserve lessons learned while supporting organizational capability development. The renewed effort culminated in comprehensive revision of the acquisition analysis that incorporated all refinements in methodology while addressing environmental compliance challenges through innovative solutions and creative financing structures. The revised analysis demonstrated substantial improvement in analytical rigor, while maintaining strategic vision that aligned with Theodore's community development and environmental responsibility priorities. The comprehensive analysis revision revealed that systematic application of improved analytical methodologies and risk management approaches could transform the challenging acquisition opportunity into a successful project that would generate appropriate financial returns while creating significant community benefits through innovative environmental remediation and sustainable development practices. The strategic refinement process established foundation for addressing increasingly complex business challenges throughout Theodore's succession planning evaluation, while building confidence in systematic problem-solving capabilities that would support effective leadership of substantial commercial development operations and community service responsibilities. The comprehensive revision of the acquisition analysis, incorporating all strategic refinements and innovative approaches to environmental remediation challenges, generated immediate recognition from multiple stakeholders who had been monitoring my progress through Theodore's succession planning evaluation process. This recognition reflected not only the analytical improvements but also the systematic approach to learning from setbacks that demonstrated leadership qualities essential for managing complex business operations. James Morrison expressed particular satisfaction with the thoroughness of the revised analysis and the creative solutions I had developed for transforming environmental compliance challenges into competitive advantages through advanced remediation technologies and community partnership opportunities. His assessment indicated that the analytical methodology now met the rigorous standards Theodore had maintained throughout his career, while incorporating innovative approaches that positioned Castellano Holdings for expanded market leadership. Morrison revealed that Theodore had anticipated the environmental assessment challenge and had structured this evaluation phase specifically to test my resilience and learning capabilities when confronted with significant analytical errors. The succession planning framework included systematic assessment of how candidates responded to major setbacks, rather than simply measuring their ability to avoid mistakes through conservative decision-making approaches. The recognition from Morrison included authorization to proceed with formal acquisition negotiations based on the revised analysis and strategic framework I had developed. This authorization represented significant expansion of my authority within the succession planning process while providing access to additional resources and decision-making responsibilities that would test my capabilities for managing actual business transactions under substantial financial pressure. Sarah Chen provided professional recognition that proved particularly meaningful, given her initial concerns about my analytical methodology following the environmental assessment oversight. Her acknowledgement of the strategic refinements and enhanced risk management frameworks reflected her assessment that I had demonstrated genuine learning capability and commitment to maintaining Theodore's standards for analytical rigor and systematic decision-making. Chen's recognition included recommendation for expanded financial authority that would enable independent management of acquisition negotiations and financing arrangements without requiring approval for routine operational decisions. This expanded authority represented substantial increase in responsibility while providing practical experience managing complex financial transactions that would prepare me for broader corporate leadership roles. The financial authority expansion included access to Castellano Holdings credit facilities and established relationships with commercial lending institutions that Theodore had cultivated through decades of successful business operations. Chen explained that these financial relationships represented significant competitive advantages that required careful stewardship, while providing resources for pursuing acquisition opportunities that exceeded typical small-scale development projects. Roberto Valdez contributed recognition through his assessment that the construction evaluation methodology I had developed exceeded standard industry practices, while providing systematic approaches for identifying and addressing potential implementation challenges before they could significantly impact project outcomes. His professional endorsement reflected years of experience managing complex commercial development projects under varying market conditions. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.